Hello everyone, Gosia here. Today I'm talking about self-betrayal and the lie that causes highly sensitive people betray themselves later in their life. And this might last their entire lives for highly sensitive people, or it may last until they start healing and seeing through these lies as they're walking through their journey of healing, becoming more authentic, and doing all the things we try to do to navigate this very sensitive experience of our life and all the challenges it brings. So today's episode is good for all highly sensitive people, as always, or INFJs, INFPs, empaths, especially people who have very high empathy and consider themselves empaths. That's going to be very good for you as well. In my last episode in this series about relational wounds, I was talking about the loss of self. And I've actually received a lot of emails asking questions and commenting on this episode because it really resonated with so many of you. And today's topic builds directly on it. So there is a tendency that highly sensitive people lose themselves in relationships. And I want to talk about the thing that makes us do it. Virtually, I don't know any highly sensitive person. I never met any highly sensitive person that wouldn't have fallen into this lie and wouldn't have started betraying themselves in some way, in some ways. Doubting themselves, neglecting, chasing goals that weren't there, doing all kinds of things we do to our detriment before we can see through the lies. So what is that lie that I'm talking about? It starts like that. Basically, small, sensitive children have so much sensitivity and access to a lot of information. Generally, highly sensitive people do have access to more, let's call them data points, okay? Because we're sensitive, we're tuned in so many things, we perceive so many things, and you might not even register consciously, but you take in a lot of things into your awareness, even if it goes somewhere deeper, but you perceive this. Most of people, most of society, they don't perceive so much. They have different mechanisms, filtering, they deflect, they have different sort of gatekeeping mechanisms that make them more sort of protected from all the data points, all the information or the stimuli that we receive in abundance. And as a small child, you might remember that you were very curious. Maybe you were asking a lot of questions. Maybe you were speaking your truth. Maybe you were pointing out different things that made some adults around you or other people uncomfortable with you. Maybe you had some observations. Maybe you were feeling a lot of things that they said, well, it's not happening. How can you feel that, right? So there was a lot more coming from you that might have made people in your life kind of shun you in a way, kind of make you feel like it's not happening. So the sort of gaslighting is going on, which is not a premeditated kind of thing, but it's still happening. It is when people tell us that something is not happening that we perceive. And because we perceive so much and they perceive so much less, and we rely on their guidance and their sort of role as a leader in our life, because that's basically how the relationship of a child and adult works. Like, we look up to them and we treat them as the sort of oracle in our life. So when you see and perceive so much, but you're told it doesn't exist, and this big person that is the oracle in your life tells you that it doesn't exist, then you internalize this and is basically a lie. You're lying to yourself to deny the amounts of things that you are perceiving, and you really start being skeptical about them, or you completely erase them, or there is a level in your unconscious mind that you tell yourself, I will never act on these sensations. I will never act on these perceptions. I will never say what I think when I perceive these things. I will never express my emotions truthfully, because it feels really bad when people kind of put me down, when they tell me that it doesn't exist. It creates a sort of gap between me and them that hurts so much. And we register this sort of reaction that they had, and we associate it with the things that kind of caused them. So we see the cause and the reaction. We see that when we say this thing, when we express our truth, they don't like us. They kind of move away, or make a frown, or make a face, or kind of distance themselves, or ridicule us, or they tell us we're silly or too sensitive. And we make these different associations to these different expressions when we observe and perceive these truths, right? And there is something in us that tells that we promise ourselves that we won't be ever doing that again. But here's the thing. Feelings that we feel and perception that we experience, especially the feelings, are the main guidance system for every human being to navigate their life. Basically, we're designed to have feelings and perceptions that are so subjective and individual for each of us, because they are guiding us and every one of us separately to reach our state of alignment, fulfillment, health, happiness, peace, and all that. So basically, listening to the internal system, such as feelings and emotions, is the main guidance on how to direct our lives, to be happy, peaceful, fulfilled, joyous, and all that stuff. So basically, the lie that we receive and internalize and therefore live by, in essence, is that we are wrong and other people are right. Can you see how bad that is for us? If we start denying our very emotions, we start denying our very path towards fulfillment, happiness, peace, love, connection, and all these things, we as highly sensitive people are especially designed to follow, because our senses are so in tune with everything and we get so much of this information. And what happens with this lie that we are wrong and other people are right, it means that we give up power to direct our life, to self-direct our life and be self-sovereign to other people. And so we, as highly sensitive people, go through life, a large part of our lives, listening to others, seeking reassurance, looking out for cues, their expressions, their body language, listening and dissecting everything they say, looking out for a sort of guidance that we're doing the right thing. Because if we stopped trusting that we know what's the right thing, then we start doubting our senses, our perceptions, our feelings to guide and direct our life. What this results in inevitably is that we are living our life as in sort of by guidance and cues and directions scattered from all other people. And that makes highly sensitive people in the first place depend on and rely on what other people feel, what they want, what they think, what they perceive, what they think is right for us, or generally what's right, full stop. And that really pulls us farther and farther away from our inner guidance, being so obsessed, so tuned in what everyone is saying, what they're thinking, what are their opinions. And there's this thing about people pleasing that so many highly sensitive people have. But actually, this is the real source of people pleasing, is not just wanting to be approved of because we're so vain, is wanting to be approved of because we're seeking a guidance about everything we do, if that's the right thing, if we're being good in whatever that standard that exists, whatever judgment tells us, whatever norm tells us that is good, whether that's someone's personal bias or whether that's kind of systemic notion that arbitrary set by society to create a sort of standard norms that exist in society. But we are not part of the sort of normal or majority. We are the minority that is perceiving so many different things. And actually, we see so much more that other people could learn to see if they were more open-minded. It's not for us to see less and give away our power to see ourselves and entire world through their eyes. It's actually for them to learn how to perceive more and become more sensitive. So you see how this lie can lead to self-betrayal of the entire path of alignment that you might be also experiencing if you tend to follow other people's cues, just try to fit into their expectations, not to offend anyone, not to disrupt any order, just follow what everyone says is right thing to do for your work or for how you behave in a sort of situation. Even if you have your own business, it could be listening to all the sort of normative and standardized ways, how is the right way of doing things. It's basically listening to all the right ways of doing things, all the right ways of being, all the good ways of existing, behaving, and all that stuff that we sort of absorb as it's our gospel from other people. Now, how this might continue in a life of a sensitive person who is really attuned to be perceiving all that. They're literally made to be connectors with the wider sort of realm of information that goes beyond the physical realm. We have the intuition, we have so much creativity. We are literally connecting the world of intangibles with the world of tangibles. We can bring these things out and create piece of art. We can bring all this inspiration or these nudges and share something to someone about a situation at work or something we perceived. Or we can use this sort of information about the person we meet and the impressions we have about them and inform our own decisions and be discerning about the contact with this person. But if we keep on living in the lie, which most of us do to some extent, we can't give ourselves the permission of using this information fully and validate it, because we internalize invalidation to those perceptions. And what we do instead, we ignore that feeling about that person, and maybe we go into a relationship with them and they turn out to be an asshole, right? Or maybe we ignore a situation about workplace that we kind of intuited that was going wrong, it was going downhill, and we didn't take the steps to maybe look for another job or basically do something to follow up on that sort of intuition or a sense that something was going on that everyone else was kind of blissfully ignoring, right? And we do all these kind of things, betraying our senses, constantly suppressing or just having them out of our awareness and not listening to none of them because we were once invalidated. Needless to say, when we do that, we're not following our inner guidance system. And what happens? We suffer. We suffer emotionally, our health suffers, we suffer creatively, spiritually, in all sorts of ways that a human can suffer, and our suffering becomes so deep. So many highly sensitive, experience depression, anxiety, or sort of panic attacks, and all the ways that our body is trying to communicate to us that we're not listening, that we are not in the flow with our life, not in flow with our calling. Our senses are not by mistake subjective, and no one else has to agree with what we feel and what we perceive. That's why self-validation is very, very important. And I will be talking about this and many other topics relative to healing the wounds of relationships in my free class, my free masterclass, where I will be talking about what I see and what has been my pathway to healing the relational wounds, such as the one I was talking about today. And the class will take place on the first Saturday, I think, of December. And it's going to be completely free for all my newsletter subscribers. So if you are not on my list, I really, really invite you to subscribe from the link in the description of this episode, and you will get notified about the dates and times, and you will get the link to attend the call. And if you have any questions whatsoever for me regarding this topic or healing relational wounds, feel free to ask it here or email it directly to me, and I will be very happy to answer it either in one of the next videos in this series or on the actual class. For now, thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and I will talk to you soon.